Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Small Time Songwriter. My name is Angel Corsi and I'm of course your small time songwriter. Today's guest, if you're watching on Zoom, is Jackson Emmer. And Jackson is a friend of mine that I've known for a little while, and he's always been super kind and supportive of what I'm up to, and me back to him, and we have a very tender relationship, I will say. It's very kind. And I really appreciate him taking the time to sit down because I know he's really busy, to have a quick conversation. We're going to talk about his retreats. We're going to talk about his songwriting process, and also just the fact that this guy just can write like nobody's business. Like he writes, produces, and then sends it out into the world. And I really am amazed by that because I'm such a shy guy when it comes to releasing stuff. So I want to pick his brain about that, and I want to hear just how he balances his family life with his regular life. I mean, the guy has a family. It's a cute kid, a beautiful wife, and it's just a very it just from my view, it just looks like a very balanced and beautiful way to live. So I want to hear more about that. All right, I hope you enjoyed the interview. If you're watching on Zoom, you might notice that my video feed is sort of tweaking out a little bit. It's getting a little twitchy. And no, you're not in the matrix. I just have some problem with some cable or something. I don't know. There's so many damn cables. Who knows what it is? But let's just get to the interview. And here's Jackson Emmer. All right, so I'm with my buddy here, Jackson Emmer. Jackson, it's so good to see you, man. I know you're really, really busy. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to me, and I even appreciate you taking a few more minutes talking to me before the interview started. So, so thanks a lot for doing this podcast. If you don't, I don't expect my friends to listen to everything that I do, unlike other musicians. So, so if you don't know what the podcast is about, it's called Small Time Songwriter, and it's basically just about being balancing the artist life with regular life and how to do that as a songwriter who doesn't really get to win the Grammys and go to the parties and get the big money and buy the mansions. You know what I mean? I think we're all sort of striving for a living, doing this stuff that we love to do. But at the end of the day, a lot of us are just kind of doing it because of the joy it brings us. So that's kind of what I focus on. But it's a broad spectrum. Small time songwriter to me means that you're not Bob Dylan yet, but that's all that it means. And I'm kind of more fascinated with you than most, because I feel that you're kind of an inspiration to me because you're really great at output. What I noticed about your writing, like, so I wanted to hear just a little bit about your story, and I wanted to hear about your writing and all that good stuff. So welcome to the show.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. It's always great to see you and to hang a little bit.
Yeah, man.
And yeah, output. I mean, where do we start? What do you want to know?
Yes. So one of the things that I've noticed about you is like you are you I said it in my introduction of you earlier, which is just your songwriting output is like very inspirational. It's very, you just kind of like, you crank them out like nobody's business, and then you publish them, which is insane to me, which is the idea of like writing a song is already an obstacle for a lot of songwriters in general, in succession, but to do that and then go, now it's going to go on Spotify.
Hmm.
It's like it's so much effort, and I'm just wondering how you do that. What is your approach to getting all that done?
Yeah. Well, thank you. That's flattering that you're into that. And yeah, there are a lot of songs. I guess a few years ago, I was working on my record called Jukebox, which came out in 2018. And in the process of writing that record, I'd written I don't know, maybe 20 or 30 other songs total in my life. And I started to meet other songwriters who were working on stuff. And I noticed that the people that I loved and like respected the most had a writing habit. Like they wrote, every day or every week, not every month. Every month is not frequent enough. If you write one song a month, you get 12 a year. I don't think
Sure.
that's enough writing to really get into a flow. But
Yeah, I agree.
yeah, I just noticed that the people that I loved like had a habit of it, and they they through that habit learned how to get out of their own way and and stop that filter, or not stop it, but turn down the volume in your head that says,
Yeah.
"This sucks. I'm not good at this. I hate everything about this song." Or even the other way where it's like, this is the best song that's ever been written. I love everything about it. I got to share it with people right now, even though I have, you know, no editing on it.
Right.
Like, like those things, I learned to turn down the volume on those voices in my head and just write, just make something.
Right.
And some days that would be purely from the heart, completely emotional, like personal. And some days when I was not feeling up for that or bored with myself, I would write in from a less personal way or from an idea or, something outside myself. And I just made myself write all the time. And I wrote like 60 songs or something,
Well,
um, in like 2 months, or, like I
yeah,
wrote a song every day, I think, for 2 months.
sure.
And that's what led to my record Jukebox. And then that was the first record that got me on the radio or got me any press or anything. And so that immediately cemented, um, like my workflow because
Right. It sort of affirmed what you were doing was right.
right,
It's the
yeah, I didn't
correct
have to
thing.
wait very long for that
Yeah.
feedback from the world that like
Yeah.
if you do this and you just make stuff and don't worry about whether or not it's good. I mean, you're going to try to make it good, but like, in the moment as you're making it, you don't worry, you just create. You go back later and try to make it better, and you do that over and over and over again. That act itself, that process makes you better at, um, saving self-criticism for when it matters and turning down that little voice in your head that
Sure.
says whatever that stops you from doing the work. And the work is what gets you all the things you want in life, which for me was to have my songs out there, to have a living as a songwriter, to be playing shows and better shows. I was a bar musician and, like played in wedding bands and
Yeah.
those kinds of things before, I released that record. And then once I released that record, I was able to relatively quickly transition to doing a lot of house concerts, a lot
Yeah.
of small venues.
I'm again, you're kind of one of my aspirational buddies because you're kind of on the path that I'm interested in following or looking at. I like the idea of smaller, more contained shows that are more about what's happening. But you've done that and then you've expanded it, so it's kind of like you get the house concert vibe, but you also make sure like 100 people are there instead of 32 or whatever. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I think that's really cool to go through those steps, and it seems like you got that feedback really quickly. I like that album Jukebox. That's the one that I probably spin the most as far as your stuff goes. Do you have a favorite song on there? I'm just curious because I have a favorite song on there.
Making Eggs is the first one that comes to mind.
That's my
Uh,
favorite song on
is
the
that your
on the
favorite song
record.
on there?
Yeah, because I think it just encompasses the artist's life. It's
Yeah,
just
thank you.
it just so easily wraps up how we are as artists and how the world around us sort of moves around what we're doing. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And I just love that song because it just reminds me of that. And it literally is that my wife, she works from home and she's up at 6 o'clock or whatever, and she's typing away, and you can hear in the house a little you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then I'm literally making us breakfast at like 8 or 9 a.m. 8 or 9 a.m. I'm there making breakfast, and I just like have no particular plan in mind. I just like maybe I'll go write a song, maybe I'll just work on some promo art. I don't know, but gonna flip this egg and then we'll get going.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you. And I love that song too. That was the first song of mine that ended up on the radio anywhere.
Yeah,
And I mean, in retrospect, I'm not surprised because it's both personal and universal.
yeah. It's very
Um,
honest. I really
it's
appreciate the honesty of it
it's very honest, yeah,
because
and
it's
it's
not self-grandiorizing either. Like a lot of times, artists will sort of create this like, you know what I'm saying? They'll create this thing where it's like we're these magicians, you know what I mean? And you're just
right.
kind of like going like, nah, dude, I'm here making eggs and people are doing the rest of the world. You know what I mean?
Well, you know what, man? So that song I wrote in like 15 minutes, maybe 20.
Wow.
Like it was very quick. And it was one of the ones I had written later out of the 60-ish. And I recorded it almost just as quick. I think it's like one take and maybe two takes on electric guitar.
Mm,
I can't remember. I don't think there's a bass on or something. Like it's very sparse, and
yeah.
very simple. And I recorded that whole album, Jukebox, I think the version you hear is the fourth version. I recorded the whole album three other times,
Wow.
trying to get it to a place where I was happy with it. Um, and and that fourth time, I think that was the first one of that song though. It was like a late edition, and I was just like, I think this has to be here. I think it's,
Yeah.
and I still play it. I mean, I still play a lot of those songs. I'm still proud of them. But
Sure.
that one, like every time I play it, I watch people transform
Right.
because they go through like, for those of you who haven't heard the song, um, it uses the idea of making eggs in the morning as sort of a turning point for your own uncertainty or like lack of drive, because you watch all these other people around you or on the internet and they're like overachieving, and you have to sit with that image while you do very mundane things like making eggs, which, as we zoom out, of course everyone's got to make breakfast, whatever. but
Yeah. Yeah.
but you know, like that's what the song is about. And
Yeah.
so yeah, um the end of the song, I don't want to spoil it, but it's both like reassuring and like we're all kind of messed up together,
Right.
just doing our best. And every time I sing it, I watch people have a moment with themselves that's both, I guess it's like it's got highs and lows, and like
Yeah.
they go through a ride in their hearts.
Sure.
And that's what I want to do with my music. Like I don't want to have, if I give you one feeling, that's not enough for me.
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
like I would like you to go on like a little roller coaster as we
Yeah.
go through this folk song thing. So anyway,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's
yeah.
beautiful because, one of my songwriting teachers, they told me a long time ago that great songs allow your audience to um, step into and live inside, and
Hmm.
I think that that sort of is a perfect example of it because me as an artist, I'm looking at it from the artist slant of like, where it's that thing that you said, that sort of like rise and shine thing where you're not sure why you're not as motivated as the rest of the world, but you're just trying to live this life and you're unsure about your position in the world with it. And for someone else, they could look at it as like the relationship they're not getting out of, or the motivation to just be more or be better or whatever. I think that's why it's such a great song to me. It's just it does allow different people to just step in it and live inside it for a little while. I think that's
Well,
a really
thank you,
great
thank
way to
you.
write. So,
Well,
oh,
can I
sorry.
say one
Yeah,
other
yeah.
thing
Go
about
ahead.
that? We were talking earlier before the podcast about like people coming to the show and then house concerts and
Yeah.
tickets, and they're paying you for stuff. And you said something like, "Is this about me or is it about you?" Like
Right.
it. And I feel like it's always about the audience. It's always about the listener.
Sure.
Like I'm just an excuse for people to have a journey within themselves.
Sure.
Like that's what any show or any piece of music is about. And that's been very freeing for me too, because when you're making all these things and you're trying to produce and you're trying to release it and blah blah, all the things that go into that, if you do it from a selfish place, like what is this going to bring me, or how is this going to make me feel, or just me,
Sure.
you're missing the real point, which is that people need to hear it and get something from it. So
Yeah.
it's really, I always try to think about, what am I giving, what am I bringing, what are we exchanging, like emotionally, not
Right.
financially.
Yeah.
And and thus far, that reframing of like, what's my music going to do for you,
Yeah.
has also fundamentally changed the financials of my songwriting life.
Oh, right. Yeah.
um
It's been better, stronger.
yeah, oh yeah, it's way better. I mean, it's a life now instead of
Yeah.
a joke. um but yeah, but so I just want to say that because I think a lot of artists, we get in our own heads and it's just about this self-expression thing, which it has to be,
Yeah.
but you got to do that with the receiving end in mind.
Yeah. And
um
I didn't reach that sort of I guess what you're talking about essentially is like the vessel kind of concept, being the vessel
mm,
for the audience. And I didn't really hit that concept until I really started writing like real stuff, I guess is how I'll say it. And then
mm,
I knew what the real stuff was. I just didn't want to write about it. You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
And it wasn't until I made that turn and made that decision of like, I'm not. I'm not just sharing the things that happen and how I feel. I'm sharing a way for someone to uh, like go on the ride with this, and then figure out how to how to take that with them, and learn something for themselves. All
Mm.
right, we'll get back to it here. All right, so you were talking about how how you see uh sort of taking the audience on a little roller coaster ride with you, that you're not satisfied with just one emotion. You're gonna need a lot more from them, and I really like your attitude about that. I think it's something that one thing I noticed about all you guys that I really appreciate. I was talking to my friend Shawnee Kilgore on the last episode, and she has a very similar philosophy of like, you just gotta write the song and do it in the best that you can, so that you can give to people and all that stuff. And I'm starting to see this. We talked about the muse when I was talking to Shawnee. She talked about the muse, and she talked about how you just have to be available to grab it, when it's
Hmm.
written. And I have such a silly philosophy with that stuff, because I was telling her, like, I never look at the muse that way. I look at the muse like somebody that owes me money. I'm just like, hey, you come
Mm.
here, come here, come here.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like, um, but uh, but I keep seeing this recurring theme of like gratitude and like intense kindness about the whole thing from people that I really look up to. Like, I look up to you, I look up to Shawnee, I look up to people, and they all have this similar attitude. And I'm
Mm.
starting to think to myself, like, I think I got the wrong attitude about this.
Mm.
but um, but I was thinking about you're talking about producing and letting go, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about you do production for other people. You're a producer for other artists as well.
Yeah.
Is that part of the process for you as an artist? Is it just something where you do it because you enjoy it, and it's kind of like the side hustle to your normal hustle, or is it something where you do get fed from that, like from an artistic point of view? You do get something from it.
All of the above are true. It is a side hustle to my main hustle, which is my music. But it's really rewarding to help musicians present their best selves.
Hmm.
And over the past few years, I have acquired some more studio chops, um, and I've also learned more about how to like translate what people are going for into like practical things, like how much compression are we using on this vocal, like like if someone is telling you something emotional about what they want from their music. Sorry, here, Colorado.
Yeah.
All right, sorry. If someone is telling you something emotional that they want from their music, you have to, as a producer, translate that into a lot of things, like what other instruments do they want, but they don't know how to describe? What sensibilities do those musicians that are going to play those instruments need to bring to the song? What's their budget? And then who can you get for that budget? As you record it, what is the texture that they're going for? Like, there's a zillion acoustic guitar sounds you could choose, right? So you have to
Right.
kind of pick one based on the sensibilities of that artist, and then also the overall mix. And these things that you have to figure out, a lot of them are things I figured out for myself, and then I started figuring out for other artists. And it's fun. It's relatively easy for me. And also, you have to make decisions, right? You can't toil forever in the studio just trying 1,000 things, because
Yeah.
no one has the budget for that anymore. You have to you have to listen to what they want and then make decisions that lead to their best work.
Yeah.
And I like that game. I like the pressure of that game.
Yeah.
I like I like sussing everything out about it. It's just really a pleasure. So so that's, I guess, what I do. And when you have to distill someone else's vision kind of out of their head, someone described it like the Harry Potter thing where you put a wand on someone's head and you like pull out a memory.
Oh, right.
It's
Okay.
like you're pulling out a vision for their song that they could not articulate but is there.
Right.
And the process of doing that also helps me make better decisions more quickly about the production of my own music.
Right.
So it's I think it just is, it feeds into the overall musical fluency and everybody wins.
Right. So it seems like it's interesting because it's almost like you've found these little pockets to circle out from your, I'll just call it like your artist self, right? So like you have like Jackson Emmer, the artist, and then you can circle out to Jackson Emmer, the producer, and it sort of
Hmm.
helps the artist Jackson Emmer in some way by doing that.
Yeah.
Um, you also do like songwriter retreats, right? You started
Hmm.
doing those. When did you start doing those, and how did those come about? And does that also feed the artist Jackson Emmer in some way, other than financially?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's obviously a financial benefit, like you said. I started doing them, I think. Well, no, that's not true. I'm sorry. I started doing them several years ago, around the time I started doing jukebox and working on that record, as a way to connect with other musicians. Like I just like we're talking about it. It's the things we do are about other people, and it's what can I offer to other people. And so I started doing little workshops or lessons, excuse me, around, and those were really fun and rewarding, but it wasn't like a big part of my life. And and as I've gotten more experienced as a songwriter and I know other songwriters, my music is out there more, it seems like better teaching opportunities have come my way.
Sure.
And Jim Hawkins runs an Airbnb, or not an Airbnb, just a B&B in this beautiful canyon in Glenwood Springs near where I live.
Mhm.
And he and I are friends. He writes songs, and he was talking about how cool it would be to have a songwriting retreat there because it's gorgeous and nice getaway. And he was like, "But I don't really know any songwriters who would teach that, like, so you probably know some people if you ever want to do something." And I thought, "Well, I do.
And you're like, I
Sure,
am some
yeah."
people.
Well, I mean, I didn't even think about it at first, it's just but thing, you just start riffing on an idea. And then I was like, well, there's probably a handful of people that would come for me. And depending on, your ticket price, it is remote. It's hard to get out here anyway, which is
Sure.
the joy and the pitfall of it. And, I'm friends with Tom Paxton, who's, for those of you listening who don't know Tom, a Grammy-winning folk music legend. He's the guy who told Bob Dylan to start writing his own material. Like, he's 85, I think, maybe 84. Don't rush him. And we write songs together every week on Zoom. We write all the time. We're buds. We've played shows together,
Cool.
and he's a big inspiration to me. And as this idea started coming together for a retreat, I was like, well, maybe, Tom's got enough fans. Like, he's been playing for 50 years that some people will come do this,
Sure.
like, why don't we try it? And so we did, and it was a 3-day retreat, and we had about 20 people there. And it's not cheap. So I understand it's not for everybody. Um,
Well, retreats
but
are they're designed to be that way. I mean, it's kind of like you're investing, like making an investment. I mean, think about how much we spend on recording gear all year or whatever.
well, that is exactly what I would say is there are so many other ways to blow that amount of money
Yeah.
and not spend quality time with working musicians or songwriters who have been doing it. Like, I've been doing it for 10 years now. Tom's been doing it for 50. Um, we have a lot that we want to share and offer. And you could, like, do a Google search on all this stuff and listen to all these podcasts, but you're not going to get like tailored feedback
Yeah.
from that.
Right.
And that's what you get when you come and you sit in the room with us and we all play songs together and we all write songs together. You are going to really see behind the curtain on that creative process in a way
Yeah.
that you can't when you just listen online. So,
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're paying for the structure, for the fact that there's like somebody with you the whole way to help you steer in the directions that you're shooting for that maybe you're missing for whatever reason. Because it's really hard to like problem solve an issue that you don't even know what the issue is. It's like kind of like trying to fix a car, but you don't know what the car parts are. You know what I mean? So it's that weird. It can be that weird thing. That's what I see is like retreats being so effective with is if you have all these experienced artists around you to help tell you that's a carburetor or that's a spark plug. It kind of makes you
mhm.
go like, oh, that's how you start the engine because you need the spark plug. Okay, now I understand.
It is exactly like that. You're paying for the human touch.
Yeah,
And So that's not cheap, which is, I guess that's a regret I have. Like I come from like a punk and folk background, and
Sure.
so to make things that are not financially accessible to everyone pains me. But also, it's really expensive to get artists to travel in the middle of nowhere and spend this time when they could and should be playing shows and
Yeah, no,
just
and
blah blah blah.
yeah, no blue collar guy or even like in my case, Bodio Kid is gonna have a problem with somebody having to make a living. Also, that's the thing. It's like people, there's this like misconception that like we should feel guilty for not doing the free show or the free whatever. But it's kind of like, no, I mean, if I talk to anybody in my old neighborhood, they'll be like, "Go get your money, dude." You know what I mean? Like that it's a pride thing. It's a proud thing to make something out of nothing, to make something out of like the art that you make. It's something to be proud of, you know. I think
Yeah.
the stigma can be weird. I think there's a balance, right? You gotta, but I mean, look at you now. You're having
Well,
a conversation now. We're having a conversation now. It's just these kinds of things matter. They balance out. So don't feel too
yeah.
guilty about it, you know?
Yeah, if you want free stuff from me, there's so many ways to get it.
Right. Exactly.
And that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that is how that's how the retreats came about, and I'd like to plan more of them. It's logistically a bit of a it
It's a
just
bitch.
takes a lot of time and work, and it takes a lot of time and work to then manage all of the retreat attendees who have a bunch of questions. Like I don't have any assistants or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I run a company that is myself. So when I have 20 retreat attendees that all have travel questions and logistic questions,
It's
and they
tough.
all email me, well, it's okay. It's just hard to then imagine ramping it up to 100,
Oh, right.
200, 500. Like I'd have to grow,
Yeah.
um,
Logistics.
which I'm willing to do. It just, you got to do it carefully so it doesn't throw off your whole life, because it'll eat your
Yeah.
life if you let it.
Speaking of your life and things that are edible, you're a family man. I mean, how old is your kid now? You're
I have a year and a half year old
Yeah.
daughter.
So you're
Yeah.
you're a new you're a new dad pretty much.
Yeah.
Is that
Feels like longer.
I would imagine. I would imagine it feels like longer. But how's that? What is that like? Are you enjoying fatherhood in all its glory, or and also are you able to balance it with your artist Jackson Emmer
Hmm.
lifestyle? Because one thing that I've noticed talking to other artists that no matter how big of a deal they are, when they're dead at home, they're kind of lame and they're a dork. They're a dork, or they're not. They're not as important, or like the needs of theirs aren't aren't at the top of the list. You know what I mean? So
Well, first off, I am a dork. That is true. I embrace that wholeheartedly. And my needs are not at the top of the list. Yeah, yeah. By design, like
yeah,
I think if you go, like, it's a weird thing to go on stage and have people like pay to see you, and again, they're paying to have an inward journey with themselves, but functionally, they're paying to see you, and you stand on a stage, and you get encores, and like people are literally cheering your name. It would be so weird if you went home and had the same experience like that. Like it should be
yeah,
humbling, like
right.
very normal, mundane, disgusting. I mean, I don't, it's thousands of diapers at this point already. And just two this morning that are just foul and
Yeah,
sick. And, anyway, that's even pretty mild. That's not the worst case scenario.
yeah,
But I guess what I'm saying is that, yeah, like, to a lot of people, I am something on a screen or a voice in the speakers, and that's very cool. And I'm not, um, I'm something sort of like detached from a human. Like it's
right.
different. It's theoretical. I don't know how to
Yeah, it
explain
gets kind
that.
of like in the Avatar kind of way, right? It's like people are
It's at a
channeling.
it's at a
Yeah,
distance. Yeah. But yeah, when I'm at home, I try to be as present and available for my kid and for my wife as possible. And that's not glamorous, as anybody who's been married a while or has a kid knows. I mean, I love it, but I would say it is very different from having people cheer your name.
it's
And I'm happy for that.
Yeah. So where does so it's like sometimes it's like a helpful way to keep the humility in you, right? It's like if you don't always have if you have to change diapers after the gig, it's a good way to re-humble yourself, right? Because it is something that I mean cuz even me who's like I'm such a small fish. Like if I have a great show, people are everyone wants to talk to you, everyone wants to take the photo and all that stuff and you do your whole
Hmm.
thing and you feel
Hmm.
really good. And my thing is like, I don't have kids. We don't have kids, but we have four dogs, and living with four dogs is chaotic as hell. So
Hmm.
it's always humbling and helpful to me as well when I have a show. It's a great show. I feel great, and then I get home and I have to clean up vomit all over the
Hmm.
floor. You're kind of like, oh, okay, we're back to this. Okay, good. you know, uh,
That's just life. I have a friend who's a pop star, and I was
yeah,
talking with her about this a little bit, and she will go unnamed, but
yeah,
she sells, I think, like 8 or 10,000 seat places sometimes.
yeah,
Um, and by sometimes I mean regularly. Anyway, Bonnaroo, whatever, Coachella. She plays these places, and we were talking a little bit about this phenomenon where like you get all this attention, and I wouldn't say it goes to your head, but like it does change the way you like move through the world.
yes,
Like a
yeah,
plumber came over and was like working at my house on something, and I forget how it came up, but I mentioned I did music, and he was like, "I know who you are. I listen to you on the radio all the time. I really like this song." And like,
nice.
that's so weird. That's so weird, right? But this happens to me all the time, and it doesn't happen to most people. So I've gotten used to it, even though I'm uncomfortable with it. And it would be easy to like walk around gloating,
right.
which sometimes, I'm very proud. I'm proud and grateful.
Yeah.
But then also, yeah, I still got to wipe my kid's butt and
Right.
like clean up the
Exactly.
dog barf and wake up
Yeah.
at 3 when someone's sick and like
Yeah.
you know, no one, no one's doing that for me.
Yeah. Not yet,
uh,
buddy. Not yet.
okay, but no, but it's a good thing. Like it's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Yeah.
You should be human.
Yeah, I know. I'm just goofing. I'm just goofing. But yeah, no, I think that's really good. It's like I used to. It's me. Like I used to box when I was younger, and I was a fighter and stuff. And there was one thing that always made me feel like a chump, and it was every time you had to spar with somebody. It was
Hmm.
this thing where it's like you feel like you're this like badass walking through the world, and you're just like
Hmm.
in your mind, you're like, if something goes down. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
I got this. But then you get in the gym and you spar with somebody, and if you got a good coach, he's going to put you up with people that are better than you, and they
Hmm.
just light you up. And there's nothing that makes you feel more back to the ground than when someone's popping you in the nose all the time and you can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? So I feel like life does that too. That we have to find those things that, like, as performers, it's our job to be, you know expressing ourselves in such a large way and in such a vast way that feels grandiose in its nature. But after we get off the stage, we have to find the thing that's going to punch us in the nose, or we're going to really lose sight of what we're
Hmm.
actually trying to do. Because one thing that I'm curious about, that I'm struggling with, to be honest, is um, I'm trying to figure out where the new songs come from, because life is so good now for me, you know
Hmm.
and life is just, I live in Colorado. I was talking about this with some new songwriters that I was meeting out here, because I'm trying to make new connections because I'm in a new town. And one of the things I was telling them was like, I'm not ready to sing about the mountains or nothing. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Hmm.
have that in me. Like it's not in me to want to sing about the gratitude of the sun or something.
Hmm.
And I'm curious in the next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years, where my songs are going to go, because right now I'm still talking about like the gutter and the barrio and the streets and the angry Italians, you know what I mean? Like, but
Hmm.
I'm wondering where the next songs are going to be when I've lived in the mountains, where I look outside and there's beautiful mountains and there's a winter wonderland every winter. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So
Hmm.
as a new father, where are
Hmm.
your songs coming from? Are they? I mean, what is your approach with all that?
Hmm. Well, first I would say I don't know where your next songs are going to come from, but if you keep writing them, you'll figure it out.
Right?
There's no way to think your way through that.
Yeah.
Um, And for me, I really haven't been writing the past month or two. I mean, this year I haven't been writing because I finished up a project I did for the 22 singles in 2022.
Yeah, which is
And I was,
amazing.
thank you. It was really fun. And so for you guys listening, check it out. 22 and 22. I released 22 singles last year for the year. And I wrote a lot more than that, though. I was writing all the time. I was recording all the time. And I just released the 22 that I just thought were best and sort of worked as a collective arc over the course of the year. Excuse me. Um, so moving forward, I guess I've been writing a little bit, but I'm in a season of not writing, and I'm very at peace with that because I write a lot, over the course of my life, and I'm hesitant to say this because I think when I was younger, when I met people who weren't writing but were like, "Oh, I'm a songwriter," I'm like, "Well, you're not writing any songs. How are you a songwriter?"
Right.
That's true if you're just getting started out. If you've written like three songs and then you're not writing any songs, um,
Got work to do.
you got work to do. Yeah, but I've written around 1,000 at this point, and um, so I have done some, and I can take a break and still not have that part of my identity vanish.
Right. There's
So
like a
I'm
trust in that.
Yeah, there's a trust. Yeah, it'll come back, when I'm ready for it. I also have found a lot of mornings now I get up before my kids up, and I get up at 5 and I just play guitar
Mhm.
and drink coffee. And that is my goal. My goal is to play guitar and drink coffee and be alone.
Right.
But almost every time I do that, like a couple songs just spill out.
Ah,
I just record them, and they're not fully formed. They're not like ready to go play, but there's a whole structure and there's melody and there's an arrangement, and like it then is about finishing lyrics and stuff. And that's a new kind of writing process for me. I normally just do it all at once,
hmm,
but I think just something about that workflow and taking the pressure off, being like, I don't have to write a song. I just want to jam and play coffee.
that sounds
Oh,
great.
but I had this idea.
Yeah, I love that. I
So
love that
yeah.
idea. That's a great idea. I wish I had a little bit of that. I'm still thinking in projects. That's how I approach stuff.
Hmm.
I approach my songs like they are going up in an art gallery kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like every painting has to mean something that's connected to the last painting kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I always approach like batches of songs where I'll take a break. I mean, I write every day, but I usually just journal or come up with titles or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I sort of put it all together. I just kind of think about, okay, what's the next art show going to be? Like what's the next art exhibit going to be about? And and think about those kinds of things. But I love
Mm-hmm.
the idea of just letting it happen, man. It's funny because there's a resistance to just letting things happen sometimes, because when you first start out, all you can do is just let it happen. But then you start gaining all this information and knowledge, and then all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden it feels weird to just let it happen, because now you have all these tools that you can use.
Mm-hmm.
But then you get so um, encompassed in your tools that you just sort of lose the part that just lets it happen. you know. So
Yeah, it's good to get back to that. And I do think it's a little cyclical. And I think, again, if you've only written three songs or 10 songs or even like 20,
mhm.
keep writing. Like the writing generates inspiration. Like the
Right.
process is the muse, and they're tied to each other. Um, but if you've written 1,000 and you just like need a little break
Yeah.
and,
Everybody deserves a holiday.
do it, take a
Yeah.
break,
Yeah.
like, whatever you got to do.
So this brings me to my last question for you, because I know you're a very busy man with a daughter and work and production and retreats and all that stuff. So my last question is always a friendship question. It's always about giving advice to your buddy Angel and giving advice to people like Angel, which is so my question is more, what's your approach to living this songwriting life as a philosophy? If you had to like pin it down to a philosophical way of being, like a way of being, a way of doing it, what would you say?
I would say something that is tied to other stuff we talked about in this interview, which is generosity. Generosity is really what so much of this comes down to, and and the flip side of it is also the thing when you go on stage and you think of yourself as a fighter and you need to steel yourself against the masses. That's that mentality might work for some people, but I think it's actually not how most performers do it. I think of it more like you're a like soft baked onion or like a flour or something. And you're
Soft baked onion. Love
like,
that.
yeah, like your job on stage is not to harden yourself, it's to peel back the layers
Sure.
of yourself so everyone can recognize something deep within you that is deep within them.
Right.
And if you, as musicians, it's really easy to go into interactions, be it booking, rehearsals, planning a tour, blah blah blah, anything that you're doing, even writing a song. If you go into it with, you have to be a little bit selfish, right? Because there's an impulse there, and we're only human. But if you go into it with, what am I going to get out of this, and I need this from you, that's a trap, and your growth and your ability to connect will be limited. But if you go into it with, what can I offer? What can I give to you? How can I help you? That's endless, and it's very gratifying. And the growth is also, I think, endless. I've seen that time and time again. I mean, we were just at Folk Alliance. We were talking about that. And there are so many people I saw who just, anybody they talked to who's like a booker or a manager, they're like, hey, here's my card. Like, call me. I want to get a gig.
Yeah.
Well, okay. What if instead you showed up and you said, hey, you run this venue in Colorado Springs. Well, I know people in Denver, Vail, Carbondale, whatever your thing is, just pick your region. They run venues. I'd love to connect you so that you can get some block bookings for bigger bands. So I can help you out. Would that be interesting? Oh, yeah, that'd be great. Well, then you've started a relationship by trying to help someone else. You've helped the music culture around you, and you have a real connection so that when you want to play those venues, they're going to write you back.
Sure. Yeah.
And if you go into these things like relationships, what can I bring to it? What can I offer? It's like the Matrix moves around yourself. It's like, yeah, it totally changes things.
Yeah. It's sort of that philosophy of like be in service, right?
Be in service.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's like
think it is the same thing as that.
yeah.
That would be my advice. I don't know, the ins and outs of your life, but
Yeah.
I just think that's good advice no matter where you are.
No, I think that's good. Yeah, and I've been following that advice recently. I've been doing songwriter meetups and community type stuff and things like that, and trying to pick my spots where it's like whatever amount of skills or whatever amount of whatever I have to offer. I try to offer it in a kindest way. I think what I always come back with you guys whenever I talk to my buddies is like, you guys have really figured out, my wife too, she's figured it out too. It's like you guys have really figured out the kindness way. The
Mm.
kindness is such a big deal in living a good life, I think. And I think for some of us, unfortunately, kindness is more of a practice than it is a natural default. So we have to just kind of like keep working on it and see where it goes. But thank you so much for doing this interview, buddy. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here, and thanks everyone for listening.
All
Hope to see
right.
you down the road.
Yeah, beautiful. If you want to connect with Jackson Emmer, of course you can find him on everything because he's fame-ish, is what I like to say. So go to jacksonemmer.com, or I think your handles is just at Jackson Emmer, right?
Yeah, on Instagram, Facebook, which is
Do you got
on the
anything?
way on the way out.
Do you have something coming up that you wanna plug? It's going up pretty soon.
I just published like today a Tiny Desk contest. I entered
Oh, cool.
for Tiny Desk, and I would say to anyone listening, you should enter too. It's incredible. Even if you don't win, here's my plug for it. The Alan Lomax archives were this incredible archive of folk music around the country that happened a long time ago. And I think of the Tiny Desk as like the new version of that. You know, it's like we're self-archiving all of the folk music from around the country. And folk music could be,
Oh, I love that.
it could be hip hop, it could be metal, it could be like literally any genre, but you're making it with your friends at home in your region. And this is the newest way to archive that. So if anything, if you don't win, just do it just to be a part of the great library of American music.
I love that. That's a beautiful way to look at it. Look at you, man. Again with the positivity thing. God, you drive me crazy. All right, buddy. I'll send love to your family. All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Likewise. Thanks, Angel.